Bills Mafia, what's going on? Happy August 30th, last Saturday of August edition of Billsology. I'm your host, Dave Myers, along with Akeem Richens. Akeem, what's going on, man? This is one more weekend, and then we have football. How you feeling, man?
Akeem Richens. If you don't know me by now, ladies and gentlemen, get to know me. Dave, I feel great. I'm excited. It's that time of year again where we get to get on that journey with the Buffalo Bills, with our team, and try to hoist the somebody trophy. So I'm excited, Dave. How you doing today? How you feeling?
I'm good. There's a little bit going on. There's not a ton going on, but this week was pretty busy for the Bills. Obviously, they cut the roster down to 53. There was a practice squad, some additions that we will get into at some point in the show. It's part of our show, Jordan Poyer, Jordan Phillips. We do want to spend some time talking about Micah Parsons. I think everybody in Bills Mafia has an opinion on that, so we will give our opinion on that. There was the Patriots released safety Jabril Peppers, so I did kind of want to touch on that. And that brings us to the safety room, things like that. Trey White's injury, Christian Benford, a lot of stuff going on. But as always, Akeem, I leave it up to you, man. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to
go? Let's go ahead and knock out that Micah Parsons talk, man. I know a lot of people, beyond Buffalo Bills fans, was thinking about the possibilities of having Micah Parsons join their team, and I know some of us Buffalo Bills fans felt the same way. I know others was thinking about Cap, and then half was thinking about him joining the team. So let's talk about Micah Parsons and what side of the spectrums we was on, and what you think overall.
I think a lot of this offseason we have been talking about edge defenders possibly joining the Bills, because Brandon Beane at the season-ending press conference came out and said that players like Chris Jones that are game wreckers do not become available like hardly ever, right? So there was the issues with Myles Garrett. A lot of people were talking about maybe Myles Garrett could be a guy. There was, some movement with the defensive end. And then Micah Parsons stuff started happening a couple weeks back. It got hot and heavy. And there's the capologist Bills fans that said it can work. We just have to do this, and that. There's other Bills fans that said it can't work money-wise. And then there's people like me who see both sides of the spectrum, but I want to go back to what I said about Brandon Beane, and this might be something where we need to go back and forth for a little bit, Akeem, because initially I was one of those people that was a realist that said there's no way the Bills are going to pay Josh Allen an average annual value of $55 million a year. Parsons is going to want to be the highest paid non-quarterback player, non-position quarterback position player in the NFL. That's a given, and rightfully so. He deserves it. He's a hell of a player. But the other part of me said, like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we make it work? Green Bay didn't have a ton of extra money, and they made it work, right? Obviously, they traded Kenny Clark and 2 first-round draft picks. But let me ask you this before we start really digging into this. If I said to you that Dallas's counter offer to the Bills was 2 first-round picks and Ed Oliver, what would you have said?
2 first-round picks and Ed Oliver. I'm going to make that trade 100 times out of 100. When we're taking, obviously we can't do that, but just for this specific talk, we're not talking about the financials and cap space for a second. We're just talking about the investment and the return on the investment. 2 first rounders and Ed Oliver for Micah Parsons. I would do that trade. I would make that trade. I'd probably throw in 𝐭𝐴𝐺 for the hell of it 100 times out of 100 for Micah Parsons.
So to me, I think what's frustrated some fans, and I know how you feel, and this is sort of how I feel. I can relate with a lot of fans about when are we going to have that Brandon Beane all-in move? Now, a lot of people will be quick to bring up Von Miller and how that worked out, but there's no way that he could have foreseen how that contract was going to work out with the injury to Von Miller and things like that. You could say age was a factor. Maybe they shouldn't have given a player his age that money, but that was Brandon Beane's big shot of grabbing an edge defender, a guy who can go and aggressively get the quarterback, a guy you need in the playoffs, a guy that will get after Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Like, that's the guy that you need, right? So to me, I think you can figure all the other stuff out later on. I think you can figure the financials out later on, because the Green Bay Packers now have a quarterback in Jordan Love, whose average annual value is $55 million per year, the same as Josh Allen's. Now, the Green Bay Packers didn't dole out a whole bunch of contract extensions this offseason for, almost $600 million. The Bills did that. So, again, why not the Bills? And you see that the title of the show, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like, why not? Like, that to me would be a move that says, look, my legacy has been on the line for 8 years. If I'm Brandon Beane, my legacy's been on the line for 8 years. I need to put my stamp on a championship, and this is how I can do it. Because like he said, players that are game wreckers on defense don't become available every day. Well, one did. Now, we don't know if the Bills made an offer. We don't know if the 2 first-round draft picks and a starter on defense was too much for Brandon Beane. And that's where I have an issue. Because if you told me, like I asked you, the 2 first rounds in Ed Oliver, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would do 2 first rounders, Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau. If I'm being honest, I would have no problems doing this. Some people are going to say I'm crazy, but I'm still thinking of players that we're hoping that there's upside to. Like, we're still waiting for a $20 million edge defender in Greg Rousseau to just take off. And everybody wants to say he's still young and he's still somewhat raw and he's molding it, still being molded into the player that they want him to be. When's it going to happen? Is it going to be this year? We hope that it's going to be this year. We hope that Landon Jackson is one hell of a defensive end, maybe this year, next year, year after, in the future. We hope that Joey Bosa can stay healthy. We hope that AJ Epinesa will give us 6.5 sacks for the 4th year in a row. So, to me, like, does it get you frustrated at all, Akeem? And I want to be real, and I want you to be real. And this isn't Dave, the host of the show, and Akeem, the host of the show. This is 2 guys talking about the Buffalo Bills and the general manager in football. Like, is this something that Brandon Beane should have actively tried his hardest to get done? And I think he should have. Now, again, we don't know if he could have, if something was counteroffered and they just didn't want to do it. But like, what offer to you would be too much to where Brandon Beane would say no? Because I don't think there is one. You get a generational player for $188 million in Micah Parsons, a guy who is a game-changing defensive player. Joey Bosa, we hope, is healthy. Greg Rousseau, we hope, can be, a potential game changer, but they're not yet. Joey Bosa, we hope, even plays a full season. So what's your thoughts? I'm gonna let you take the mic and just kind of dive into this Micah Parsons situation overall and the roster outlook and things like that on the defensive side.
So I guess we're gonna have like this. Well, and again, everybody, welcome to Billsology, Akeem and Dave, A Rich, DM3. And we like to have like these real conversations. And sometimes when we have these real conversations, it is things that are necessary to say, it's things that must be said. It may not be something that some Bills fans may or may not agree with, right? But these conversations are tough conversations that need to be had. And when I look at Micah Parsons' contract, when I'm looking at the numbers, it's like, you know what? I see why the Buffalo Bills did not make this move. Now, on the football field, is it a move that you want to make? Absolutely. We're talking about a guy in Micah Parsons that had 13 sacks year 1, 13 and a half year 2. Year 3, he had 14, and last year he had 12 sacks on a disappointing year for Micah Parsons and the Cowboys. He had 12 sacks. This is the type of guy that you want late in games to make that game-changing type of play, to make that play against a Patrick Mahomes, against a Joe Burrow, against a Lamar Jackson, those type of plays that we need to get over the top and take the next step, we haven't been able to make. And a guy like Micah Parsons is definitely one of those guys that can make them type of plays that the Buffalo Bills been lacking the last couple of years. And I think when I look at it in that retrospect, I'm like, how much times are we going to keep trying it this way and not being able to work before we switch up, right? But then you have to look at everything in hindsight. In the Buffalo Bills' mind and their organization mind and Brandon Beane's mind, they tried that with Von Miller. They gave Von Miller that $100 million contract. And us as fans, yes, we was excited. We got a future Hall of Famer. Us as fans, yes, we got excited. He just won a Super Bowl with the Rams, and he was a key piece to winning that Super Bowl. Yes, we was excited because he did show ability even at the advanced age of 33. But that's the problem right there. There are not a lot of non-quarterbacks in this day and age that's getting $100 million contracts. So I think when that happened and the unfortunate injury of Von Miller happened, then it ultimately, the contract did not work. Doesn't matter why it didn't work. It didn't work. I think those are causes for concern, not necessarily to me that wants a Micah Parsons, but to a Brandon Beane, to a Buffalo Bills organization to think that they just did that a couple of years ago, and God forbid they're going to spend twice as much as that 3 or 4 years later, and who knows what may happen. God forbid an injury happens, and now we are further behind because we can't make the moves we need to make because we made this Micah Parsons deal. So when I look at cap wise, Micah Parsons $44 million signing bonus, $62 million through the new year, $100 million through 2, $141 million through 3, $120 million guaranteed at signing. When I look at the numbers, it's just ridiculous. It's otherworldly. and because of that, it's like, even in the group chat, I was trying to sway guys like, listen, Micah Parsons, I want him to go ahead, make the move. But when you look at the financial aspect of this deal, it was really hard for the Buffalo Bills to make this deal. But on the flip side, I would say why are we not having the proper conversations? I am grateful for being at this point, to have primetime games, to be one of the top teams in the NFL, to be an AFC East champion 5 times in a row. But at what point are we not going to satisfy and yearn for more? We don't want to stop there. We ultimately want to hoist that Lombardi trophy. That is the ultimate goal. And when you look at the Bills roster and we're looking at, we can't make moves because we don't have no money, it's like, what? We still have concerns at the safety position, and we don't have any money. We have concerns at the cornerback position, and we don't have any money. If you line up the wide receivers and you go wide receiver room against 31 teams in the NFL, I'm not sure if the Buffalo Bills wide receiving room is a top 10 wide receiving core in the NFL. So I do have some concerns in terms of looking at Brandon Beane. Now, he does an excellent job filling out practice squad players, right? This is why the Buffalo Bills, they have a high floor, because they have depth players, because Brandon Beane gets guys like Jordan Poyer to the practice squad, gets like guys like Jordan Phillips and Sam Franklin to the practice squad. Does a good job in drafting late in the rounds. He does a good job in getting solid players that have limited ceilings, but he doesn't seem to do a great job, in my opinion, to getting us over the top. And I think, in my opinion, as great of a job Brandon Beane has done, it's a red flag for the Buffalo Bills to have the concerns they have with the lack of money and financial cap flexibility that they have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we talked about it a month ago. Like, I think 12 through 53, the Bills against any other roster are really good. Or I should say 11 through 53. It's the top 10 on your roster. Are they better than the Eagles, the Chiefs, some of these other teams, the Ravens? And that's goes right into your point of, we have no money and we have concerns on defense everywhere. Cornerback, safety, like you said, we have concerns with the wide receiver position. And a lot of people said that when you have to pay Josh Allen, which was a few years ago when he got paid the first time, and now again got paid again, the extension, you're going to have draft picks play. You're going to have to rely on cheap contracts. You're going to have to rely on first and second round picks to pan out. Well, guess what? How are we feeling about the last few years of first and second round picks? Honestly, how are we feeling? I mean, Dalton Kincaid, I think, is still to be determined. I feel like he's going to have a better year. Cole Bishop, we traded 𝐬𝐿, like things like that. I'm not going to knock Maxwell Hairston because he's injured, right? So we don't even know on this year's draft class, but we have to hit it out of the park with all as many draft picks as possible. And I'm not saying he's a bad drafter. There's a lot of people out there that will say Beane's a lousy drafter because for the shortcomings that he's had in the early rounds, he's found a lot of starting caliber players on day 2 and 3. So it is what it is. Every general manager misses on draft picks, But
Dave, I gotta ask you something. It to me, it's beyond just the. I guess I got a statement and a question. To me, it's beyond just like the draft, right? It's some decisions that's being made. Now let's look at a couple of guys right now. Dawson Knox contract cap hit this year is $14.5 million. Next year is $17 million. Ed Oliver's cap hit next year in 2026 is $24 million. In 27 is $25.7 million. Is Ed Oliver, and I love Ed Oliver, and this is not a disrespect. It's just I gotta call a spade a spade. Is Ed Oliver that game-changing type of player to command 24, 25, $26 million and essentially leaving the couple of the Buffalo Bills limited in what they can do in other areas? Is he worth that type of player? Fine player, but is he worth between 24 and $26 million? Is the decisions I have to wonder if Brandon Beane agrees with if he looks at the contract now. Same with Dawson Knox.
I mean, Dawson Knox last season took a pay cut because I think the team finally realized that it's time. Like you're not the number one tight end target. And I feel like this team loves Dawson Knox. So there might be something happening right now where he's going to be, where he's going to be getting restructured again because his money is just too much for a guy who doesn't get the targets. He's basically an inline blocker. But to your point about Ed Oliver, again, I will keep saying Ed Oliver is probably a top 15 defensive tackle, and he's getting paid the market value for defensive tackle. Because if we look back on his contract in 3 years, it's probably going to be a value, right? So that's where all of the Bills cap experts and contract experts are going to come out of the woodwork and say that it's a value. It's going to be a value. If you think that paying Ed Oliver $50 million the next 2 seasons is a value, and you have a problem getting a guy like Micah Parsons, like that's where I have an issue. Now, you went through what Parsons is getting next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and it's a lot of money. I get that. It's generational wealth. I understand that. Do you care how much he's going to be getting paid next year if the Bills win the Super Bowl this year because they have a defensive generational talent that will help this team get over the hump of the AFC Championship game and get into the Super Bowl? No. Nobody's going to complain if they have to make some adjustments next year. But the fact is, they're not going to have to make adjustments because we're locked into these guys via either the draft or all the extensions that they made. I've said it for a while, and I'm probably going to catch a ton of heat for this. I'm not happy with the Greg Rousseau contract. And that's not a knock on Greg Rousseau. He's a very serviceable defensive end. I know it's the second highest paid position, essentially, besides now the wide receivers are getting there, in the NFL. But is Greg Rousseau a generational defensive end? Honestly, is Greg Rousseau a defense? You know what he's going to do this year? He's going to give us 8.5 sacks. Now, maybe, again, we're hoping that because Joey Bosa is over there, that he's healthy, that alleviates some of the stress on Greg Rousseau and he gets more sacks. We're hoping that the interior of the defensive line is better so that he can get more pressures and sacks. So I that's one of those deals. I understand why they did it because he got paid market value, but he's an average defensive end. He's good in the run, and he'll get you 8 to 8.5 sacks a year in splashy games here and there. And that's the same for Ed Oliver. It goes on and on. So I was a little frustrated that when you can get a guy like a Myles Garrett, yes, you're going to have to pay him gaudy numbers, but he's going to be a game wrecker, something that McDermott has not had on this defense, minus the 10 games that Von Miller played. That's it. So I don't know. I mean, is there anything else we should touch on this? I mean, I was kind of heated before thinking about it. I was heated when it happened. I was online way too much on social media looking at everybody's comments, either pro or con for it. And it's one of those things where I'm not going to ever sit here, and I don't want to get on a soapbox and just dog Brandon Beane, because he's done a hell of a job, and this team is where they are because of him and Sean McDermott and obviously Josh Allen. But you have to look at the stuff that we're going to talk about today as concerns heading into a season where we all thought that this was the best opportunity, I think, that we thought we were going to have. Because last year was a rebuild, a soft reset, and they went to the AFC Championship game. This year, they've improved, according to them, roster building wise, they've improved everything that was wrong last year. So I don't know. I don't want to dog Brandon Beane, but everything we're going to talk about today is a direct reflection on Brandon Beane. So anything else you want to add about Beane, or should I get off my soapbox and just keep it moving?
Yeah, we could keep it moving. I think we're going to touch on a lot of more Brandon Beane discussion as the show continues.
I know I sabotaged the show. I took over the show. So
Very fine.
All right. So Brandon Beane also acquired some vintage Jordans this week. Jordan Poyer, Jordan Phillips. I'm going to let you go first on this, because I feel like everybody's just going to think that I'm super negative, and I'm not intending to be, because I love Jordan Poyer as the person that he is. I love Jordan Phillips, what he brings to the team. I put out a video about Jordan Phillips this past week. So what's your thoughts initially when you saw, first, I believe Phillips came out for earlier in the week, and then Poyer on the practice squad? What's your thoughts?
So initially, I thought it was a red flag. I looked at it as a red flag. Okay, we had this Jordan Phillips reunion the last 2 or 3 times, whatever. We go ahead. The point of an off season is to improve, is to get better, is to improve or upgrade in the player positions you thought that you lacked in the previous year. And if Jordan Phillips is not signed to a multi-year extension, if he's signed as a player on a year-to-year basis, it's obvious that you must feel that he's filling a void because you're not satisfied at that position. So I looked at it as a red flag initially. Like, we have all these guys and we're still going to get a Jordan Phillips for the 4th time. But then I looked at it again. I got a chance to sleep on it a little bit. I'm like, you know what? He's a practice squad player. I think that raises the floor for the practice squad team overall for the Buffalo Bills. This is kind of what Brandon Beane does. He finds players. If it's a next man up situation, I think Brandon Beane is one of the best GMs at the phrase next man up, in terms of not having a steep drop off as much as other teams would have if they were missing players. So I think Brandon Beane does an excellent job of that. And I believe getting a Jordan Phillips and getting a Jordan Poyer is a proponent to raising the floor for the Buffalo Bills. So overall, am I super ecstatic about it? No, we kind of know what their ceilings are. We kind of know where they're at in their careers. They can help the team some, but I don't think these are players that you can depend on a team to ultimately hoist that Lombardi trophy. They can be stopgaps in terms of helping along the way if guys get hurt or if they have to fill in spot starts or spot situations. I think it becomes beneficial. But overall, I didn't get overly excited. I'm a little disappointed. Not that Jordan Poyer is on the team, but it says that we have some concerns at safety, and it's the same concerns we had last year going into the season. It feels like deja vu with the safety position to me, especially after once again Taylor Rapp getting hurt, once again Cole Bishop getting hurt, once again everybody's up in arms with the possibilities of DeMar Hamlin starting. It just feels like reminiscence of 365 days ago. So that's the only thing that I'm not particularly a fan of at the safety spots, but I understand why the moves is made. You raising the overall floor of the Bills.
Yeah, I don't think any of it moves the needle in any direction. I do think that Jordan Poyer eventually will be on the active roster, the 53. Jordan Phillips, I'm not sure. If you look back at some of the stuff that they said to the media this week, they both said they have gas left in the tank. Now that's obviously they're going to say that they want to play. And if there's injuries and we have to rely on Jordan Phillips to come in for a quarter or a game or whatever it is, that's fine. My concern is at the safety position. I saw Jordan Poyer play last year, and I know for a fact that 2 months ago, Jordan Poyer he was on vacation with his wife and was not even in football shape. I know that for a fact because I follow him on Instagram, and he was, rightfully so. He was vacationing with the family, just wasn't probably even thinking of football. And then to find out that Brandon Beane has been talking to both of these guys for the past several months, all the way back to the April. That's what concerns me is the old tried and true is what everybody wants to talk about on social media. It's like, why can't we just find other guys to fill in? Why can't we find young guys? We know what the ceiling is for Jordan Poyer. We know what the ceiling is for Jordan Phillips. They're not going to catch lightning in a bottle. But if we find younger guys that might be out there and available, like the next guy that we're going to talk about who just became available, I think that both rooms need to start getting younger. And that's what they did when Poyer and Hyde initially were not on the team before last season. They went younger and faster in almost all the positions on defense. They said, we need to get younger. We need to get faster. And that's when they cut Tre'Davious White and everybody was up in arms. But I don't know. It's to me, I'm not excited about it. If the guys want to retire as a Bill, cool. It's sentimental thing, but I don't think there's value that's been added. Now, if you're talking about the practice squad, you're talking about guys that aren't going to bring a ton of value other than to practice, right? That's what they are. They are the practice squad. So I don't know who else could have been out there, if there's anybody that the Bills really liked in camp that they had in here. But either way, I think that Poyer is going to play at some time this year. And I also think that Damar Hamlin's going to play at some point this year because of the two safeties that you said and spoke on that are constantly dinged up. Cole Bishop has not had a training camp. Essentially, he's not had a training camp. He missed last year's. He missed most of this year's. He played 15, 20 snaps in a couple preseason games. Taylor Rapp, he's dinged up all the time, and he's always wearing a Guardian cap because I think he has some concussion issues. So it's concerning. It's really concerning that Akeem and myself have talked about the safety room since 2022 when we said that these guys are hitting 30. What's the plan? What are we doing? Like, what's the ultimate plan? Because it's not Saron Neal. It's not Mike Edwards. It's not any of these other guys. So that brings me to the next topic that I wanted to talk about. The New England Patriots released safety Jabril Peppers, and I think it's a no-brainer. He has 80-plus career punt returns. So that could tie into the whole Brandon Codrington taking up a roster spot deal because I feel like there's guys on the roster that can do kicks. Punts is where you want a guy that can control the ball and actually, knows what to do in tight situations. But what's your thoughts on Jabril Peppers? You think he's got something left in the tank? I still think he's a very safety. What's your thoughts?
I like Jabril Peppers. I like his game. I liked him coming out in college and from the University of Michigan. It took him some years to find himself, but ultimately, I think he came over to the New England Patriots and did a fine job before his arrest. It seems like once he got arrested, I believe sometime last year, I forgot for what it was for. It seems like that's when everything, I guess, went downhill as far as being a part of the New England Patriots. But he came on to the Patriots in 2023. He had that new contract that he had an 87 overall grade in 2023. That was fifth among safeties. He had a good coverage grade, 83 coverage grade. He was a 90 run defensive grade. We're talking about a guy that can, in my opinion, play both safety positions. He played in the box safety and free safety. We're talking about a versatile player that can do kick returns and punt returns. I think he would be an overall upgrade to the Buffalo Bills, not just the safety room, but to the entire team, because he can do a multitude of things. So I know the Buffalo Bills just signed Jordan Poyer, but and who knows if Jabril Peppers would have got cut maybe a little bit earlier before Jordan Poyer, who knows what may be going on right now, but who knows if it's too late or not. I really like Jabril Peppers, and I think he would upgrade the Buffalo Bills football team.
Yeah, and this, see, all of our topics tie in together because this is exactly what you first talked about with money, because the Bills have literally no money. They have a little bit over $1 million in salary cap. So I understand he's probably getting some money from the Patriots for being released, but do we have money to sign a guy like Jabril Peppers? Is it something that he's going to take a league minimum deal because he's still got money coming from the Patriots? But he improves that room instantly. And I think that he's not even a practice squad guy. I think he's on the 53 because the versatility, like I said, with the punt return ability, like you said, he could play either position at safety. The main thing that really struck me about what you were talking about was the run support. He's really good, fantastic in the run support. I think he said he had a 90 grade in PFF in run support. So, again, the Achilles heel of the Bills defense seems to always be the run support. We always need help in stopping the run. So, I don't know. I look at a guy like Brandon Codrington, and I kind of touched on it, but I look at a guy like Brandon Codrington, who is a roster spot because he returns kicks and punts. He doesn't do anything at the quarterback position. If you can give me a guy like Jabril Peppers who can do punts and safety, now there's value there. You don't have to worry about Codrington. I know his contract's not big, but then you can find someone else to do kickoff returns. I mean, you could have Ty Johnson do it. I mean, he's your third down running back. We all love Ty Johnson, but you can't tell me that Ty Johnson can't average 27 yards on a kickoff. So I don't know. And then obviously Ty Johnson brings value on the roster elsewhere. I just feel like having one roster spot for a returner, to me, that doesn't bring you value anywhere else is concerning. And the Bills have had that for a while. So I don't know. I think Jabril Peppers in Buffalo is a no-brainer. So, all right.
Who is – spot question right quick, and apologize for it in advance. And the chat can tell me as well. Who is the best Buffalo Bills returner in your recent memory?
Andre Roberts. And you're going to say that's all he did, right?
Well, I mean, he had a little receiver game to him. He had more of a receiver game than Codrington had at cornerback. I'll give him that. But Andre Roberts, he didn't do much either, and he was a damn good return man for the Buffalo Bills. And I think Codrington, even though he played one position, I don't want to sleep on the special teams position too much. I do think, there are Hall of Famers coming out of special teams. You got Devin Hester. That's mainly a special team player that made the Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not saying Codrington is to that level, but I do think he's an above average return man for the Buffalo Bills.
If he's getting a roster now, I'm going to preface this by saying, so the league rules have changed on kickoffs, right? So This year is going to be probably a petri dish, and we're all just going to be looking at like every team's giving up kickoffs, or every team's not giving up kickoffs. Everybody's got two guys back there. Each guy seems to be getting a chance to return based off of how they're trying to angle kicks, all that stuff, right? So I think Brandon Codrington's going to get a pass this year because it's new special teams coach and Chris Tabor, new rules on kickoffs. I think he's going to get a pass, and it's just going to be he's got a roster spot. He looked like he was the best one in camp. In preseason, Shenault was okay, but I don't know. I hope he breaks a couple big runs this year. That to me would warrant that roster spot, would be a couple big returns this year. And that's just like, okay, we don't even need to look at him in the cornerback room. Dude, you can fall asleep in the film room during the cornerbacks meetings, whatever. Get us a couple 40, 50, 60-yard returns throughout the season or touchdowns, and that's fine. The Bills fans will be good with that. So,
right.
I don't know. All right, so where do you want to go next? Do you want to talk about Trey White? You want to talk about the concerns we might have at CB2? Because then it could tie back into kind of – I know you wanted to talk about Christian Benford too. So,
yeah.
You want to talk about Trey White for a minute? Or
yeah, we could. Yeah, let's go to the cornerbacks.
All right, so I'm glad you put that picture of Brandon Beane up behind you because I was a little concerned First and foremost, when the Bills were cutting down their 53, leading up to it, we had not heard much of anything about the IR players. We didn't hear anything about Trey White's injury. They were kind of just not giving us anything. And then we saw the roster come out, and we saw that Maxwell Hairston was going to go on IR. So we're like, okay, cool. So Trey's injury must not be that bad. But Brandon Beane came out and said, we hope he's ready at some point. That's concerning. Does that mean you hope he's ready for Baltimore, or you hope he's ready for after the bye week? Like, what does that mean? So what's your concern level for the Bills' CB2 position heading into week 1 against the Ravens?
The Ravens, they're one of those teams that is one of our rivalries, right? I think the Baltimore Ravens is in that boat. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs is in that boat. You could probably throw Cincinnati in there just because of the quarterback. I don't think the results is there as much, but having the quarterback and those guys tying into each other, you could put them there as well. But the Baltimore Ravens, man, they have a guy in Rashad Bateman who I think improved immensely for the Baltimore Ravens since being drafted over there. They have Zay Flowers. They added DeAndre Hopkins as well. So they have a pretty damn good wide receiving room over there in Baltimore. So Trey White's injury is definitely concerning. And what I read when I'm reading through when I'm going through the tea leaves is Trey White should be able to play at some point before 4 games is up. That's why we didn't put him on IR, but he's not going to be ready for Baltimore week 1. Where he's going to be ready more for week 2, possibly week 3 is probably the goal for Trey White. So I'm thinking right now he's definitely going to miss Baltimore. He's possibly going to miss week 2, and we'll probably see Trey White week 3. So I'm thinking we're going to have to be looking at either Jamarcus Ingram or Dorian Strong to fill that void at cornerback 2 for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's concerning that there was no specific week to week. McDermott usually comes out and says day to day, week to week. We're taking it, one day at a time. There was none of that. It was just we hope to get him back at some point. But what you pointed out, which was a good point, is that hopefully it's before the 4 weeks that Maxwell Hairston's going to be out at least 4 weeks on that short-term IR. So again, Jamarcus Ingram knows the system. I think a lot of people had him as a bubble roster guy. I know the Bills love him. He's been in the system for a few years. He played well last year when he was called upon. He had a couple picks, I believe, against Miami last year. And then Dorian Strong, another 6th-round cornerback that might be starting across from a 6th-round cornerback. So we'll see. We hope that they have some really good cornerback play going into week 3, because that's the Miami Dolphins. And we know that they have a track team. So they're going to need all DBs possible, 100%. So we talked about Trey White. Let's talk about Christian Benford, because Christian Benford was interviewed. I'm not sure how long ago this interview took place with Ty Dunn. And great read if you haven't read it. A lot of stuff came out that a lot of information that he volunteered about his recovery, about the whole concussion during the AFC Championship game, what happened before the AFC Championship game against the Ravens, things like that, how he was feeling during that whole playoff process. So reading what he had to say was pretty I'm not saying I'm an overreactor, but I like to play devil's advocate a lot. And I was a little bit concerned coming away from that article that this may be something that is a reoccurring thing with Christian Benford. Now, I understand the Bills just gave him a huge extension. I understand the team probably had the best medical professionals, or the league had the best medical professionals give him diagnosis and do tests and do all this stuff and check on him. But Akeem, what's your concern long-term for Christian Benford? Not even short-term, but long-term. He missed practice most of this week because he said he just was tired. He was exhausted. I don't know the symptoms, if that's related to concussion. Everybody's different. So what's your thoughts on Christian Benford?
I'm concerned for the short and long term, for Christian Benford. Obviously, being a fan of his and being, in my opinion, one of the more underrated cornerbacks in this NFL, is definitely concerning because I want to see him out there and I want to see him play and I want to see him play his best. From the business aspect is concerning because he just signed a 4-year extension. So he's a part of the team plans. He's a part of the team's core roster plans, construction. So when I look at it from those two aspects, it's definitely concerning. And number 3, it's when I look back at the highlights, and he sustained that concussion against the Baltimore Ravens, and then it was what 5-6 days later against the Kansas City Chiefs. If I gotta call a spade, now I know there are doctors involved, and I know that doctors are obviously medical professionals, and who the hell am I? I'm here on doing Billsology, but I know that when you get concussions, it shifts around a lot of things in the brain that's not necessarily supposed to be shifted, and that takes time to heal. And every player is different. Every player gets concussions and heals differently. Christian Benford probably wasn't ready to go out that next week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, as a fan perspective, Buffalo Bills fan, you want to see your guy get out there. You want to hoist him Lombardi Trophy, and he gives you the best chance to do that. But if we're talking from like a human being perspective and just being personable, it didn't seem as if Christian Benford was ready to come back that very next week on that short term when he just had a concussion a few days prior. And I think because of that, he's having possibly having linger effects coming into this season where, he does feel he is tired or he is exhausted. And the reason why that's concerning is because this is football. This is a combative sport. You're putting on that helmet week 1 and you're going to be week 1. So how much can you sustain that type of impact week after week after week after week for the duration of this season? Can you sustain that type of impact week after week for the duration of your 4-year contract? If you're exhausted right now and you missing practice because of fatigue and you just had a concussion several months before, everybody's going to draw that conclusion. And everybody, in my opinion, should be concerned because this is not a leg where you can kind of like wrap up and it's going to heal if you don't make it worse. This is your brain, and you can't, there's really no protection besides the helmet. There's no protection for your brain in this combative sport. So yes, I have concerns for Christian Benford.
Yeah, we're going to have to just cross our fingers and hope everything's okay. Now, again, I may have overreacted to the article, but I saw a lot of people and a lot of the medical folks that follow the Bills and post content about the Bills had the same sentiments. They're like, we hope this is not something that was overlooked first and foremost between the Baltimore and Kansas City game. Now, league officials will take over and they do all the concussion protocol monitoring and stuff like that. It's not the Bills that do that. It's the NFL that handles that. So hopefully they didn't put him in a situation to where he just shouldn't have played, and he did. So again, we don't know who made that call, how that was handled. But
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How do you think that conversation goes when you're in an AFC championship game, or if you're in the playoffs and there's jobs on the line and players that want to play that may or may not have a concussion? Do you think that, yes, it's medical professionals there, but do you think that there are players that's going to sway that situation? Do you think that the team possibly could say, hey, if the player's good, hey doc, I know you're the medical professional, but if he's good, then we need to get him back out there. How do you think that works?
I honestly hope that it doesn't work that way, but maybe it happens. I don't know. Like if Josh Allen gets a concussion, which I firmly believe that he had a concussion and went in on the next series. I can't remember what game that was, but you're telling me if Josh Allen goes up against whoever in the playoffs and gets a concussion late in the game, the Bills end up winning the game, however you want to split it. 6 days later or 7 days later, they got to go play the Baltimore Ravens or Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC Championship game. You think that if they ask Josh Allen, are you good to play, he's going to say no, I can't.
Right.
But again, I don't know where the league gets involved and looks at the scans and the CTs and says he can't play. Because I think there's been times throughout an NFL season where we've had players like in concussion protocol for like 3 weeks. And we're like, what is going on? Like, why is this guy taking 3 weeks to come back when most guys they miss one game and come back? And then there's just really random situations. Like, why is it taking so long to get information about? So again, I think it's all handled by the league. And that's a really good question. I don't know if players or coaches have any say in the situation at all. I wonder if they have to be cleared by the league. So
neurologist.
I mean, I don't know. That's a great question. That's something that we should probably try to do some digging and figure out, because if it's your 53rd best player on your roster, you're probably going to hold him out. But if it's one of your top 2 or 3 stars, like, you need a Christian Benford against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. He's your best defensive back. So I don't think it was a case of they went to him and said, hey, are you good to play? I think it was doctors somewhere said he was cleared. Now, if we agree with that or not, well, we don't know. We'll never know. So
I got one more question for you because of what we're talking about, Max Harrison being hurt, and when he comes back, he's on a steep learning curve now, right? Maxwell Harrison is not like, he's coming back and he was one of those generational players before he left. He was coming back. He still have to learn the system. He's still going to have a steep learning curve, more of a steep learning curve than a Cole Bishop last year, because of the position he plays. The cornerback position is the most difficult position to play in football, not named the quarterback position. So he has a steep learning curve. We have Trey White, who is a older veteran who's been through injuries and he's injured now. We have Christian Benford, who knows? We hope he can get through, and it's just a thing right now, and it's just something he has to battle and get through. Do you think the Buffalo Bills should or will add to the cornerback positions at some point this season, or do you think that they're going to do what they do best, see how the season goes, and then try to make a play for whatever the position they're struggling in?
That was a multifaceted question.
Yeah.
First on Maxwell Hairston, hot take. I don't think he plays much this season, if I'm being honest, because if you remember, he got injured earlier in camp. He had that weird hamstring thing that kept him out. That was the rookie mini camp. And then this knee injury that he's got going on now. We don't know the severity of it. The team put him on IR. In 4 weeks or 5 weeks from now, he is just going to be doing basic walkthroughs and ramping up to practicing again. So then you're talking about a few more weeks to where he's actually running and performing everything that they need him to do. In the meantime, you have Dorian Strong or Jamarcus Ingram, who's probably starting the game, because I don't feel like the Bills are going to make a move before the season starts.
Right
now, I'm torn, because we talked about this a while ago, where we talked about Dorian Strong might be starting across from Christian Benford, and then we'd have 2 6th-round picks starting and then no 1st-round picks starting at cornerback. But I feel like Hairston's kind of behind the 8 ball here, because Ingram knows the system, right? Tre'Davious White, who knows how the severity of his injury. And I feel like if Dorian Strong plays good enough to where he's learning and growing each week, why would you take him out? Why would you take him out just because Maxwell Hairston seems to be ready to go, or Tre'Davious White seems to be ready to go? Everybody's raved about Dorian Strong's work ethic and how he's looked in training camp. I thought he looked fairly decent in preseason. Take that for whatever it's worth. But if we get to the trade deadline and they're not sold on where Trey's at, where Hairston's at, yeah, I absolutely see them making a move for a corner, because if they're 6-1, 6-2, 7-1, 7-2, and they're looking to go, like, just keep pushing forward for that number 1 seed, you have to try to bolster your roster any way that you can, right? And at that point, they'll have Ogunjobi and Hoyt back. So you got to think that there's some players that are going to be dispensable, right? There's going to be some players that they're going to want to have to move on from just because there's no room for them. They're going to have to do that when Hairston comes back anyway. So is that a Tyrell Shavers, or is that a
Mm-hmm.
and somebody like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's your thoughts? Do you think they're going to make a move before the season? They're going to see if anything shakes out the next 8 days, 7 days. They're going to make something in season. What's your thoughts?
I think the Buffalo Bills have proven, with Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean, that they can be a patient bunch. So I believe they're going to play it out. They're going to give their guys that they have on their team every opportunity to step up and make plays and contribute to this football team. So I think guys like Jamarcus Ingram is going to get a chance. I think guys like Dorian Strong is going to get a chance to be more than serviceable for the Buffalo Bills. And if they work out, then that's great. We have young guys that's continuing their development. If it doesn't work out, then I believe the Buffalo Bills would do what they need to do in terms of upgrading the roster, because they feel that they have a chance in season to win to hoist this Lombardi trophy. So if we can upgrade the roster and get better off these struggles, I think we'll do so. And if that's the case, one of my guys right here behind me is definitely a guy I think the Buffalo Bills should definitely keep in touch with. I know Asante Samuel Jr., he's had, I think, a spinal injury where he's going to get his CAT scan, and he's going to get reevaluated in a few weeks. If he gets reevaluated and he's indeed healthy and he's ready to go, then he's one of the cornerbacks I would look to acquire from the Buffalo Bills. So yes, should the Buffalo Bills get a corner mid-season? If they're struggling, absolutely. Right now, I think guys like Jamarcus Ingram and Dorian Strong deserve every opportunity to prove that they can play in this National Football League.
And one thing too about Brandon Bean that, I shit on him a little bit at the top of the show, but one thing about Brandon Bean, he is very reactive when something like we saw when Trey went down. He went out and made a trade. So like he will be reactive if something, he feels like if there's a need in season, he will go out and make that trade and try to bolster the roster. We didn't even talk about Jordan Hancock at the safety position. We forgot about Jordan Hancock. I feel like he may make an impact in that safety room. We didn't bring him up that much because I feel like Cole Bishop, I'm torn because I have the belief that this team and these coaches see something in him that the same thing that they saw in Terrell Bernard. I have a feeling like maybe us as fans or the media or whatever just don't get enough glimpses into the work that he's putting in and what he's putting on tape for them at practice and stuff like that, because we all thought we were in trouble when Terrell Bernard was going to be the starting middle linebacker. We were like, geez, the tape from last year was not good. Preseason looked really rough. And then here we are. Like, he just got a massive contract. He was one of only 2 Bills captains last year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I have hope. Again, we have a lot of hope this season. I have hope that they're seeing the same things from Cole Bishop. And again, he was a rookie last year who missed training camp. He came on towards the end of the season somewhat. He looked a little rough in preseason against the Bears. He looked better against the Buccaneers. So we'll see. And he just needs to play. I honestly think that he just needs to play. And hopefully, he is the guy that they took at the 2nd round pick in last year's draft. So,
and if you think about like how the Buffalo Bills coaching staff operates and their thought process, how they think when they go to player evaluation or player progression, I think Sean McDermott, he said it best when he was not necessarily talking about 𝐾𝐨𝐴, but in terms of how a player progress. If he's been in training camp and he's been on the team, ex-player, for 3 summers, 3 training camps, 3 years, and they're still not the player they figured they would get or develop to and reach that potential, then it's probably something wrong. And I think a little bit after that, 𝐾𝐨𝐴 was traded to the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's starting over there, by the way. We'll see what happens there. But the Buffalo Bills, they like to give guys time to progress. We didn't know what Terrell Bernard was going to be, right? You just said it. Our 5th round pick, when they drafted him, it was like, who is this guy? Why are we drafting this guy? When we saw him in the first year, he didn't look that good. His 2nd year, he looked better. Sean McDermott believes in player progression. Spencer Brown, his first couple of years as a right tackle for the Buffalo Bills, he didn't look that great or what he is now. Back then, he took time to develop and progress. In that third season, Spencer Brown took off. So sometimes it's about player progression and how much time is needed said player is going to take to develop. And sometimes, unfortunately, those players don't progress at all in your system. So we hope that that's not the case with Cole Bishop, but he's still in his second year. I think because he's all we have is why we want him to do so much more. If the Buffalo Bills probably did a better job having another veteran safety in there where we can kind of bring him along slowly for the ride, I think we wouldn't be as a harp on Cole Bishop as much as we harp on him now, is because he's a grand necessity for that Buffalo Bills backing on that defense. So we'll see how he progressed this year.
Yeah, I think like another one that you like the guys you were talking about is Dawson Knox. Like year 3 is when he really started. Like I think that was the year he had 7 or 9 touchdowns. I mean, the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the year 3 where he took off. That's why I'm ultra positive in Dalton Kincaid this year. I feel like this is year 3. I feel like they're going to work some things out and figure things out because, like you said, we need these guys to play well. We need the guys in the last 3 years draft class to perform because of the Josh Allen contract, because of the other 400-something million that they just shelled out for the future. We have to play guys that are young and they have to perform. Because everybody wants to say that Sean McDermott doesn't play young guys. And he even, said something in one of his press conferences this offseason saying, look, young guys are going to play. They have to play. There's no, I don't play young guys. They're going to have to play and they will. So, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. All right, we're approaching an hour. I appreciate everybody that's been watching. If you haven't smashed the like button already, please smash the like button. If you're watching this on Facebook, share it. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're watching on X, please like and share. Akeem, anything else before we head out? Next week will be a preview show for week 1. So that should be great. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff lined up for that show. I'm looking forward to that because that's our actual first I don't want to say pregame, but our first pregame in a few years. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be fun. We have our pregame Saturday, and then we're going to come back late Sunday night for postgame. So that's going to be fun as well. So tune into that. Bills of Buffalo has a lot of things going on. We're going to have it's going to be a busy week. It's always busy at Bills in Buffalo. Dave does a tremendous job doing things behind the scenes. Shout out Lance as well. I think we covered everything we needed to cover today. It was a compact show. It was flowing throughout the show, and I think we covered all our bases. So we're good here. We're good here.
All right, sounds good. So for Akeem, I'm Dave. We will see you guys next week. As always, go Bills.
Go Bills.